like everybody else, I'm obsessed with Huntrix and with Kpop Demon Hunters, and I may have already started making the cosplay. Yeah, as soon as I watched this film, I knew I wanted to make the cosplay, so I just started making plans on how I was gonna make it, what fabric I was going to use, and basically just like how I could do it. I am trying to make this cosplay as soon as possible, and it isn't because I want to be the first one making this cosplay, but because I am going on holidays in a week and I really need to hurry up if I want to finish it before I go. This was probably not a very clever idea. And if you're wondering which of the 3 characters I'm gonna be making, the answer is all of them. Yeah. You like my microphone, right? Right? You get it? I shouldn't throw it. So before I start sewing, I'm just going to show you some of the fabrics that I'm going to be using, because I know you are all crazy trying to source these very weird fabrics that they are wearing, and they are so shiny and so beautiful. So I thought I would just make a little bit of a haul of what kind of fabric I will be using and which kind of fabrics I'm going to be using for these 3 cosplays. So first of all, if you're gonna be making her top and bottoms, first of all, I'm gonna be doing Rumi, and for that cosplay, you're gonna be needing some stretch fabric. This one has a little bit of shine going on with it. It's not iridescent because I couldn't find any locally, so I had to just like do with whatever I had in my stash. However, I did find this other one that does have the shine, and if you're looking for this type of fabric, you want to be searching for something like iridescent fabric. I have found things in rainbow as well, if you go through rainbow. This one is just a little bit silver, so I'm gonna use it on the side panels of her final dress. I'm gonna base it a little bit more on the character design because it's more striking over there. I would have liked to have this on white as well, but anything that I found online wouldn't make it in time, and it would take like 2-3 weeks to arrive. So I did go for these on the side panels, and I'm going to be combining these two. However, something very important is that white fabric is usually very see-through, so if you're going to be making this cosplay, I really strongly recommend you to either line the fabric or flat line the fabric, so it's not so, probably not good for the mic, so it's not so see-through. So I just got myself just plain stretch white fabric to put underneath this. This will also make the fabric look a little bit thicker, because if you notice in her, itchy. I wanted to make it look like something that is good quality, and good quality usually means thicker fabric. And if you don't find the correct fabric, you can just like make it up. So that is a way of doing it. So yeah, for the base pattern, I'm gonna be using these 2 fabrics. However, I am also making the version with the jacket. And for the jacket, I got this sequin fabric. This one in particular is not stretchy, and this is going to be great for the actual jacket. However, once again, this is see-through. Oh, actually, is it stretchy? It stretches. Ooh, has a little bit of stretch on one side, so I may be able to use it if I have enough. We'll see. I don't think I'll have enough. So this fabric, if you're just using it for Rumi's jacket, it doesn't matter if it's stretchy or not. It's probably better if it's not, because it's going to be easier to sew, kind of. It's never going to be easier because it has sequins on it. And if I show you the part with the sequins, it will make more sense. Like that! Haha! So once again, I'm going to be having to line it or flat line it with black satin, just to keep the shine and to make sure it doesn't get through. And for the details, I'm going to be using this sequin trim and a bunch of gold. What are you? Chain. And a bunch of gold chain as well. And I think that's the most important part, materials. But let's talk about patterns. As always, I make my own patterns from scratch. I started with a pattern that I thought was close enough and adjusted all the lines so they were closer to my references. Making patterns is a time-consuming process with lots of trial and error. So I made several mock-ups and adjusted the seams so they matched my references. Once I was happy, I transferred all the adjustments to my computer and created a digital version. This way it is easier to size it. And yes, I draw all my patterns by hand, and I will be linking them in the description if you want to save yourself a few headaches. One thing I really like about this pattern that I made is that I have made the collar in one piece. This will close over here, but basically I was looking at the reference pictures for a long time and there is no seam at the collar, so I decided to make it in one piece, which requires a little bit more expertise on pattern making, but I am pretty happy of how this looks. As I said, once I put the zipper here, it will close properly, but because it's stretchy, it just wants to go back. So yeah, that is one feature I am super proud of. And by the way, this is supposed to be like a little bit shorter, and yeah, it took way more effort and way more tries than I expected, but I think I got a very decent pattern in the end. Once my patterns were ready, it was time to cut the fabric. I folded the piece in half and I cut all the pieces using my rotary cutter. Stretch fabric is very temperamental, and although you can use scissors too, you may get better results with the rotary cutter. Also, don't forget to add the seam allowance if you are using my patterns, and cut the notches so you can align your pieces easier later on. I repeated the process for my lining and used wonder clips to keep my outer fabric and lining pieces together. This process is called flat lining and works very well when you want to change the properties of your fabric. For me, I wanted it to look thicker and stop all those transparencies. It is a little bit of extra work, but in the end, I think it was totally worth it. And another trick when using stretch fabric is to use wonder clips. They will keep your fabric flat with no puckering. Okay, cats will also keep your fabric flat, whatever. This machine is called a novel locker and it's a little bit different from a sewing machine. It's especially designed for stretch fabric. You don't absolutely need this machine. You can use a zigzag stitch on your normal machine, but the fabric I am using is very slippery, and if you have access to this machine, I strongly recommend it because it's going to make your life so much easier. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to just finish the edges for these pieces and make them into one. And now I have all my pieces ready. You can see they're still stretchy and this fabric is a little bit thicker and it looks so much nicer, and I can just simply start attaching the pieces together. A good tip is just to keep your pieces in order because it's just gonna help you know which one is which. So this is the front and this is the back. And what I want to do is just find those notches again because I've lost them. And where's it all here? So I'm gonna mark them again. I know I said no pins, but it's just gonna be easier if I just mark with a pin where those notches were, here and here. And then what I'm gonna be doing is start pinning from the notches, and you will see that this part fits pretty well. And this part doesn't look like it fits, but if you just move your fabric slightly, you'll make it fit. And here is another tip when you are working not with this material in particular, but basically when you have a curve, what's going to happen is that it looks like it doesn't fit at the very top. But the truth is that you're going to be sewing here. So once you turn this fabric, this is the test to know if it works. Once you turn the fabric, you will see that they line up. But if you try to line it up all the way here, what's going to happen is that when you sew your fabric here, these two parts will not line up. So make sure when you are putting curves together, you think of where your fabric is supposed to stop, like the seam allowance. If you have like this much seam allowance, which is what I've got, that's where it stops here. So that's gonna line up perfectly. My camera died, my second battery didn't charge, I am having a hell of a day, and yeah, this is what I mean when I say this is not for beginners. Basically, my fabric is not having it. Using stretch fabric at best of times is a pain, and yeah, it's just skipping stitches and it's not easy to fix. And I think I'm just gonna like use my serger on everything because I just can't be dealing with this anymore. Just remember that if you are using stretch fabrics, you want to use a zigzag stitch. That is if your fabric is actually happy with your sewing machine, or your sewing machine is happy with your fabric. Yeah, no, mine is not happy with this particular material because it's just too stretchy. You also need a special needle for stretch fabrics, which I don't have today because I didn't plan in advance, because I'm just cone crunching, and as everybody knows, cone crunching is not the way to go. So yeah, just using my serger. Okay, all the pieces are assembled and it is now time to insert the zipper. And this was a bit tricky. I recommend you to draw the opening with a heat erasable marker so you know exactly where to sew. I drew a line to each side of the center and made a triangle at the bottom, about 1 centimeter away from the edge. I added iron-on interfacing to a scrap of fabric to remove the stretchiness of this part. This is going to help a lot with the next steps. From that piece of fabric, I cut 2 rectangles a bit longer than my zipper and ironed them in half. Then I basted them to my zipper so they would hide it when it closed. This is very similar to how you make a welt pocket. And now it is time to sew. As always, you want to place your zipper facing downwards. However, you are going to be sewing it about 1 centimeter from the edge, which is the gap that I drew on my collar. You can now cut the opening on the front, including the corner. The next step was catching the bottom edge with your zipper facing down. You just will have to move your fabric slightly to make sure you are not catching anything else. Cut a notch on the other side so it forms a triangle, and match the edges together. And this is how it should look. Don't worry if this step looks a little bit tricky, my patterns come with step-by-step instructions and diagrams, and I even give you some alternatives to sew this part if this is a little bit above your skill levels. And with the most difficult part done, the only thing left was to close the back seam. And by the way, I know you are using stretch fabrics and you don't usually iron them, but you can still carefully do it if you want a really crisp and professional look. Just make sure to put a piece of fabric on top and use a heavy object to keep those seams flat while they cool down. For the edges, I simply used a piece of stretch gauze and I attached it as if it was bias tape. And yes, this time I had a stretch needle. Let me just show you the bias tape for a moment, because this is not perfect and I am aware that it's not perfect, but unfortunately, depending on the machine you've got, you may struggle, and more than the machine is the actual materials, so this may happen to you. And yeah, I do have a few skipped stitches here and there, but as long as this is looking decent enough, I am happy with it. Also, I realized that I cut this a little bit too small, but it's okay. I'm just gonna sew it by hand because I'd rather have a clean edge over here. The good thing about stretch fabric is that it doesn't really fray. So I'm just gonna do my best. It's not going to be a professional finish, but I don't have a professional machine for it. I just have like a home machine, so that's absolutely fine. And also, even if it looks like I made a straight stitch here, I was using kind of like a lightning stitch on my machine, which has a little bit of give, so my fabric is still stretchy. Just keep in mind that you need to use a special stitch for this as well to keep this stretchy, because if this was to be a straight stitch, a normal straight stitch, the material, the thread would just break, so make sure you are careful with that. But yeah, I don't think it's my best job, but it's gonna be alright, and I'm just gonna finish it by hand to make sure this looks good. Keep in mind, this is for fun. You are not expected to have like the best results ever, as long as it looks clean and neat on the outside. So yes, I simply finished the edge by hand, and I added a little star to my zipper to make it look like Rumi's. Time to move on to the shorts. And don't worry, these are way easier to make. First, I cut all my pieces, and there is a few including the lining. Same as before, I flatlined every piece. And don't forget to keep the pieces tidy. This will make your life so much easier when you sew them. One by one, I simply attached all the panels together. I sew them all, and I repeated it with the other leg. Time to turn this into some shorts. For now, you want to sew the front to the front and the back to the back, but just on the curved edges. At first it will look like a skirt, And in order to make yourself a proper pair of trousers, you only have to sew the crotch. With all the pieces assembled, it was finally time to try it on. I think we have a little problem. I totally sewed this wrong and I didn't catch the actual zipper, so not only it shows it's not properly sewn. Also, I think I'm gonna take, this always happens whenever you do this kind of bias tape, you need to make your bias tape ever so slightly narrower, not narrower, like shorter than the actual armhole in order to just like gather the extra fabric. But if it happens, it's an easy fix because you can just like pinch it a little bit here and it should fix it. Totally wearing the wrong underwear as well. And for the trousers, I'm actually quite happy with them. I made them wide and comfy, and I'm loving this part so much. I made them wide and comfy because I am going to be making another version which is tighter, but for her, for Rumi, I'm pretty sure that she's wearing something a bit wider. So if I were to make this, like, there's a lot of room here. If I were to make it a little bit tighter, what would happen is that it would be giving you the sausage effect, and I don't like that. So this pattern is actually meant for like you could be making these with non-stretch fabric, and once I'm gonna cut this part to add the waistband over here, and once I put this here as well, there is no camel toe effect in here, so that is good. You can see the lots of cookies that I have been eating, but yeah, I'm just pretty happy with this. Just wanted to figure out the lengths before I trimmed it, and I think that's actually pretty good. I'm gonna be cutting this and adding a waistband, which was the one thing I wasn't sure about, so I made it a bit longer just in case. But yeah, I can just like cut it here, add my waistband so it doesn't fall off, and just pretty happy with how it's going. Probably I'll be wearing like some higher, like Bridget Jones granny panties to avoid all the cookies showing. But yeah, I think if I manage to fix this, which is the one part that it's annoying me the most, it's fairly good, and it matches. Yep, it does match. Yes. Don't worry, all these changes are just part of the creative process, and they are already included in my patterns. That is why I always test all my patterns to make sure they fit, so you don't have to go through the same problems. And with this, only the waistband was missing. And I have good news! The waistband is just a rectangle folded in half. And to make it fit nicer, I added a wide elastic band in the middle. Yes, I'm sorry this is black, it should be white, but I am just using whatever I had in my stash. If you look closely, Rumi's shorts have a little detail at the edge, so I cut a rectangle of my silver fabric. And I attached it to the edge of my shorts folded in half. I also tested the width of my waistband and sewed it, creating a circle that I attached to my shorts. Keep in mind, your waistband is going to be slightly smaller than the opening, so your shorts don't fall off, and you may need to slightly stretch it a bit while you sew it. The best way to do it is by clipping all the edges. I was not gonna do any more trials, but this is looking amazing. And I am super happy and impressed with myself because I was really worried about this band. I still have to take that part off. That's the basting. But look at that! It's looking good, and it's not making me look like a sausage anymore. You know, if you get some nice supporting here, it's just perfect. I'm made up. And with that, the only thing left to do was to fold any remaining hems and sew them by hand. I won't go into much detail about the 3D printing process in this video, you know how much I love it. But I basically asked my friend Ninshali to create this piece for me, and I painted it gold. She has also made it available for download, so I will give you a link in the description. Then I cut a strip of gold leather and used it as a belt, fitting it through my 3D printed piece. For the details, I simply used gold chain and trims and added a hole to my belt so I could secure it with a clasp. I also found a bunch of beads on my stash to use in hair charm. And with a little bit of chain and jewelry pins, I created the ornament. You can actually find jewelry rods to attach the pieces, but as I didn't have any, I made my own using a skewer. Once I attached all the pieces together, I painted my skewer to match, and with that, the last detail of my cosplay was finally finished. This cosplay is fully finished, but I actually didn't have time to wear it before I went on holidays, and I am still working on the jacket and all the accessories. But don't worry, I am almost done and I am so looking forward to wear it. So make sure to come back in a few days because I will be showing you the second part of this tutorial where I make the jacket and the accessories and I wear it, and I once again find my 3D printers because yes, that's what I seem to be doing every single week in this channel. While you wait, I linked all the patterns for these and my other Huntrix cosplays in the description. And until then, I will see you in the next adventure. Bye!
작은 습관 하나 둘 셋 모든 게 널 닮아 있어